Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? Uh-huh. Okay, I'm going to stop you there because what you're doing right now is trauma dumping by answering that question negatively. And I do not have the capacity to hold space for your trauma at this moment. So I'm going to set a boundary with this conversation so that only I can answer that question because I had a really good day. No, I mean, I'm fine. I just you said that your food was really, really good. And then you offered me a bite of it and I took a bite of it and I didn't think it was that good. So I'm just feeling really gaslit right now. Like the fact that you were prioritizing your taste buds over my potential taste buds is very narcissistic. And I think that you should speak to somebody about it. Actually, by you telling me that I hurt your feelings, you were criticizing me and I was heavily criticized as a child. So that is triggering to me. So I'm going to need you to dial it back in because when I am mean to you, it actually heals my inner child. And I need you to hold space for that. Otherwise, I will have to go no contact.
Therapy speak and psychoanalysis has actually ruined human connection in Western society. Like, I'm at my wit's end with it. It's caused, obviously psychology has caused a lot of positive advancements for a lot of people, and I'm not denigrating that at all. Those are all very valuable, but the way that people are starting to incorporate it into their interpersonal relationships and the way that people are using therapy to stay in their eternal victim complex is starting to become a sickness all on its own, and people aren't realizing this, and people are starting to sound like fucking ChatGPT when they communicate their needs with other people, and we are just lacking a raw humanness. You can be respectful without being therapy speak.
My sister started therapy, which is great, but it's turned her into something that is impossible to communicate with on anything but her absolute terms, and she uses therapy speak to put up walls and be self-righteous. Example, refuses to say hello at family events, and when someone suggests that it would be nice to say hi, she does a breathing exercise and then blurts out, "It's not my job to entertain you. I'm not participating in performative acts for you, and I'm not responsible for your feelings." Yikes. Okay, picture this. Your friend has been acting weird and distant and you've been feeling like there's something off. And after a while, you finally muster up the courage to ask them, "What's wrong?" And they hit you with this.
"I've noticed you've been withdrawn and haven't wanted to hang out recently. What's going on?" "I've treasured our season of friendship, but we're moving in different directions in life. I don't have the capacity to invest in our friendship any longer." "Is it something I did? This feels really sudden." "I get that it might be hard to understand, but I've been reevaluating many areas of my life recently, including my ability to be a good friend to you. I just want to be honest and upfront so I don't disappoint your expectations. I'm sorry if this feels painful and confusing. I wish you all love and success."
Yes, this is exactly the friendship breakup advice that the clinical psychologist Ariana Brandolini once recommended in her TikTok video. Similarly, in 2019, a Twitter thread offered a template for turning down a friend's request for help. "Hey, I'm so glad you reached out. I'm actually at capacity / helping someone else who's in crisis / dealing with some personal stuff right now. I don't think I can hold appropriate space for you. Could we connect at a later date or time instead / do you have someone else you could reach out to?" Yeah, therapy used to be something that you hoped you never needed and carefully hid if you did. But as Gen Z and millennials have led the charge in destigmatizing mental health, therapy terms have started slowly seeping into our everyday conversations. In recent years, terms like trauma, boundaries, gaslighting, narcissist, toxic, emotional labor, attachment styles, all of them have exploded online. What used to live inside therapist offices and textbooks is now shaping the way we talk to and about our family members, friends, co-workers, and exes. Yeah, let's not forget about them. Gen Z, who, by the way, don't owe anyone anything, are increasingly adopting HR language in dealing with their personal relationships, avoiding the discomfort and inconvenience and the very messy parts of being human. Which brings us to today's question. Is therapy speak really a marker of progress in our attitudes towards mental health, or is it just an easy cop-out? So in today's video, we're unpacking the rise and weaponization of therapy speak by Gen Z, why it feels empowering to use therapy terms in everyday conversations, and how, when misused or overused, therapy speak might be quietly killing our relationships and making us even more lonely and selfish. Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, let's first define what therapy speak actually is so that we are all on the same page going forward. Therapy speak refers to the overuse of terms like toxic, triggered, PTSD, OCD, emotional labor, gaslighting, abuse, and so on outside of therapy sessions, in social media, casual conversations with friends and family, and even in a work environment. Among general reasons behind the rise of therapy speak, we can mention the exponential increase in accessibility of information about mental health through internet and social media, the confessional nature of social media itself, and the aftermath of COVID-19, of course. As Nick Haslam, professor of psychology at the University of Melbourne, put it, some might say that parts of society have become safer and less exposed to adversity and hardship. And less exposure to actual harm means we are less resilient towards the slightest show of it. Many people have become more concerned with suffering and maltreatment and more preoccupied with minimizing them. This, of course, refers to the more privileged among us, because suffering and hardships are still very much present in this current world that we're living in, so take this all with a grain of salt. Now, I do want to highlight the role of therapists as influencers in all of this, and just in general this trend of offering bite-sized therapy advice and throwing emotionally resonant therapy terms out there in order to catch the attention of the algorithm. Social media already has a tendency of flattening nuance in its 30-second TikToks and Reels, and it's especially harmful when it comes to serious topics such as mental health. On TikTok, for example, many therapists are forced to keep their advice general and palatable, which can lead to oversimplification of psychological truth. Moreover, following those influencers might give you a false sense of being in therapy without the hard work and vulnerability and individualized feedback that actual therapy demands. On top of that, there are of course a lot of unlicensed self-help personalities online that may pose as professional therapists. I'm sure you all heard of BetterHelp, for example, an online therapy platform that connects users with, as they claim, licensed mental health professionals for virtual counseling via messaging, phone, or video. However, BetterHelp actually faced scrutiny for the lack of oversight regarding who gets to serve as a therapist on their platform. It has been revealed that in some cases, individuals without proper licenses or accreditation were being matched with clients, which of course raises serious ethical concerns. And I'm just pointing these things out because for many Gen Zers, platforms like BetterHelp or influencer therapists might be their first encounter with mental health care, which might give them incorrect or incomplete knowledge, which in turn might lead them to misuse or overuse therapy terms in the future. And don't even get me started on how many young people use AI tools nowadays for therapy purposes. We don't even want to open that Pandora box.
If you know you don't want a relationship, why get into a talking stage?
You're right. If he really wanted something, he's showing more effort instead of just talking in circles.
He's just an idiot. Let's just call it what it is. He's an idiot. He's an idiot.
Exactly. That's the part that's confusing. If he already knows he doesn't want a relationship, why even start talking in the first place?
According to the Harvard Business Review, these are the top 10 uses of AI from this year. What's even crazier is to look at the top 3. Look at the podium finishes. They are literally all professional support. So it's therapy, life organization, and finding your purpose.
This is the ultimate prompt to make ChatGPT your personal therapist using proven, scientifically backed frameworks and techniques. But first, bookmark this video and hit follow. Above my head is the full ChatGPT prompt. Act as a compassionate, knowledgeable guide using proven therapy tools. Focus on safety first, but gently challenge unhelpful thinking. Walk alongside me at my pace.
And though this video is mostly about criticizing the use and overuse of therapy speak, I first kind of have to point out a broader positive change that comes with it. An obvious benefit of therapy speak in everyday conversations is that it can destigmatize and normalize mental health concerns. As a society, we've always struggled with the fact that mental health issues have been treated as something shameful rather than an inevitable part of human experience. So being more conscious about mental health health, as well as being able to recognize, say, abuse or manipulation is definitely a good thing, especially as opposed to stuffing it down and never really talking about it and suffering in silence for years. Also, because of Gen Z's openness and outspokenness about mental health concerns, there has been a subsequent increase in employers' attentiveness to it. Corporations now at least pretend that they care about employees' well-being. They organize more and more webinars about mindfulness and self-care. Some provide better employee assistance programs and mental health benefits, and so on. However, though it is definitely important for mental health issues to be normalized and talked about, the incorrect use of clinical terms and phrases can actually do more harm than good. Sometimes we end up turning complex psychological terms into trendy buzzwords, losing their actual meaning in the process. Trauma bond is the first thing that comes to my mind. The sheer number of people who say, "Me and my best friend are trauma bonded," or "I talked to this random chick in the restroom of a club and we trauma bonded over our shitty exes." Like, no. In reality, for those of you who didn't know, trauma bond is not between two people who experience trauma together or experience similar types of trauma in the past. It's actually between a victim and their abuser. Thus, the correct definition of a trauma bond would be the development and course of strong emotional ties between persons where one person intermittently harasses, threatens, abuses, or intimidates the other. In this case, a person experiencing the abuse, say for example a child or a woman, may develop sympathy for their abusers, a parent or a romantic partner respectively. Victims in these cases get bonded to the person due to familiarity of being abused. They become unable or unwilling to leave those relationships, and even when they leave, they often return to them. Another big one is gaslighting. Please note that as of right now, gaslighting is not officially recognized as psychiatric or psychological disorder by the American Psychological Association. Though it is widely used, it is rather done so colloquially. The origin of the concept comes from the 1938 play Gaslight by Patrick Hamilton, in which a seemingly proper husband uses lies and manipulation to isolate his heiress wife and persuade her that she's mentally ill, so that he can essentially steal from her. One of the husband's tricks is to secretly dim and brighten the indoor gaslighting, insisting his wife is imagining it.
I don't remember opening my bag. Well, I suppose I must have... You did put it in there.
Don't you even remember that?
Yes. Yes, of course I do. Suddenly I'm beginning not to trust my memory at all.
Though the concept comes from the play and subsequent movies, the term gaslighting itself does not appear in either of those. It was first printed in 1995 by the New York Times, and it was named the most useful new word of 2016 by the American Dialect Society, following a surge in popularity of the term during the 2016 US presidential elections. However, once a specific term referring to meticulously planned attempt to make a person believe that they cannot trust their own senses. Gaslighting is now often used commonly to refer to essentially any attempt to deny one's previous words. My favorite is when gaslighting is used on the internet, like you're being a gaslighter because you don't agree with me, right? I'm sorry to break it to you, but you cannot say that someone is gaslighting you when they say something that does not conform to your view of reality. And honestly, I can go on and on and on in this section, like calling someone narcissistic or toxic just from one interaction with them. And don't even get me started with the amount of self-diagnosis online. It seems like everyone is bipolar these days. Preferring to have clean and organized home means that you definitely have OCD. And people also think that they have ADHD simply because they find scrolling on TikTok more entertaining than their finals prep. Now, come on. Okay, I actually want to stop here and make a quick disclaimer. We are focusing on Gen Z in this video, not because it is fun to pile shit on them. I'm actually myself on the cusp between millennials and Gen Z, so I get it, guys. But really, because Gen Z is the first generation to grow up entirely in the age of social media, where emotional vocabulary and therapy speak are not just normalized, but widely circulated. Unlike millennials who came of age during the rise of mental health awareness, or boomers who were taught to suppress their emotions altogether, Gen Z has been encouraged to be emotionally literate, to name, process, and share their feelings openly. However, while Gen Z have definitely gotten a lot of negative attention for their casual use of therapy terms, they are definitely not the first to use slang concerning mental health. Such language has been around for generations, and the dilution of words has happened since the beginning of language. Just look at words such as idiot, crazy, insane, imbecile, and so on. Haslam, whom I already mentioned in this video, actually developed a concept of concept creep that refers to the gradual broadening of psychological terms to encompass a wider range of experiences, often far milder than what those terms were originally intended to describe. I would actually highly recommend you read that entire article if you are interested in this topic at all. For decades, people have referred to sadness as depression, worry as paranoia, and uninhibited emotional expression as hysteria. Perhaps what feels distinct about now is how focused the terms are on relational dynamics rather than individual neuroses. Shifting use of language possibly reflects a larger cultural movement in the relational landscape and the way we are connecting with one another in the 21st century. And this shift from individual to relational dynamics is exactly what I want to focus my discussion. The thing is, I honestly see the overuse of therapy speak as one of the symptoms of loneliness epidemic. We know that because of technological advancements, hyper-individualism, economic inequality, and so many other factors, the young people of today are growing increasingly apathetic. They're so hesitant to expand their social circles, but so quick to cut people out of their lives. The phrase "you don't owe anyone anything" has become a life motto for many Gen Zers.
Listen, I don't know who needs to hear this, but please stop explaining yourself to anyone. Friends, strangers, family members. You do not owe anyone an explanation of your decision-making.
Many rather wrote in bed all weekend, then go out with friends.
The one thing I'm a little bit worried about is how, like, when I get older, I'm gonna have, like, 0 stories to tell because I take rotting in bed very seriously. Like, my introvert tendencies, I feel like, are fun, and like I love romanticizing the whole like staying home, like just normalize doing what you want, like you don't have to go out and party. Like I fully believe that. Like I don't think you have to go out and like party and like have a normal teenage experience to like have a really amazing life.
People don't know how to be there for each other anymore. They avoid uncomfortable feelings such as annoyance and vulnerability and slight discomfort, all of which inevitably come with having any kind of relationship. I think that is why we are constantly dismissing each other with therapy speak, because labeling someone as narcissistic or toxic is much easier than expressing or confronting raw and difficult feelings such as fear, jealousy, rejection, and abandonment. For Gen Z, it's almost like therapy speak turned into a substitute for vulnerability and open conversation, when in reality you don't need a label to say I don't like you. If someone hurts your feelings, especially if it is a repeated pattern of behavior, you don't need some grand justification or diagnosis to say, look, I don't like the way you make me feel. Now, it can really go one of two ways from there. Either that person will invite an open conversation and will hear you out, and from there you can hopefully work on your issues, or they might close up and get defensive, and at that point it might honestly be best to let that relationship go. Either way, neither outcome automatically means that one of you is toxic or narcissistic or manipulative. It just doesn't. Our feelings and pain is not always someone else's pathology. Sometimes they're just our feelings and our pain and our perception of reality. The second way Gen Z weaponized therapy speak on the daily, especially on the internet, is to win arguments, I guess, to justify their self-righteousness, and to avoid any kind of personal growth. Unfortunately, we live in the age of anti-intellectualism. I have talked about this topic multiple times on my channel before, but people today are more concerned about being right all the time rather than wondering if they truly are. They imagine themselves as the only ones who know best, and they're so intent on not only proving their superiority but also on showing that all the others are essentially stupid and wrong. This is happening on a daily. I see it on Reddit, I see it on TikTok, I see it in my own comment sections. We are not listening to what people say anymore. We are just waiting for our turn to speak, to leave a snarky remark, or turn everything into a joke. Also, we are problematizing normal human behavior such as disagreements, which is wild. So labeling someone a narcissist just because they have slightly selfish approach to something is an easy way to win an argument, especially online, right? The word narcissist carries more weight, so if I say that to you, I am correct and you're automatically in the wrong. Yeah, I don't know what to say here. This topic bothers me a lot, to be honest. I hate to be an alarmist, but critical thinking is really kind of dead, and the fact that we're using psychological terms to get the upper hand in an online beef or in a real life argument too, to be honest, that right there tells you everything you need to know about where we're at. And lastly, I also want to discuss how therapy speak get weaponized by Gen Z to deflect accountability.
Do you ever want to say how you really feel without consequences? Do you have no intention to ever work on yourself but want to seem evolved? Do you want to get away with literally anything you want? Then you might need to learn therapy speak. With therapy speak, you can bail on things last minute. Hey, I can't come to your birthday tonight. I need to honor my personal boundaries and conserve my emotional bandwidth. I'm at capacity right now. Oh my god, of course. Protect your peace, girl. Avoid being there for your friend. You need to lean into the discomfort, practice radical acceptance, and learn how to self-soothe. True, you're literally so wise. And break up with people with no explanation. I'm not in a space to authentically show up, so I'm practicing compassionate detachment. Yo, that's so valid. If I ever go to therapy one day, I'll probably understand then. But therapy speak. Do whatever you want and still sound like the better person.
Look, maybe I'm wrong, and this is definitely not confirmed or anything, but I personally track this back to the early day influencers and their scandals and dramas and how they mentioned their anxiety or past childhood traumas every single time they got cancelled or called out for something.
I'm so sorry. It's been a long time coming.
Obviously, I don't know these people, but it just always felt convenient to me that the only time they ever talked about their mental health struggles or anxieties is when they needed a sort of emotional shield that deflects accountability and shuts down any criticism directed at them. And I think since then, this trend kind of trickled down to us ordinary people, and I feel like these days, honestly, a lot of people weaponize mental health and therapy, and not just online, in real life as well, to avoid their responsibilities, shift the blame from themselves for something they've done or the mistake they've made, to talk back to their managers or their parents, etc, etc. Once again, returning back to Nick Haslam and Concept Crypt, he warned us about the risks of pathologizing everyday experience and encouraging a sense of virtuous but impotent victimhood. And this is a tricky topic, right? Like, of course, we cannot really judge someone else's trauma or dismiss their experience because people respond differently to different situations. Something that is traumatic for one person may not necessarily be that traumatic for another person, and believe me, I totally get that. But I also often think about where is this line between unraveling a taboo and draining a word of its value. I feel like this mass adoption of therapy speak and this linguistic inflation can really water down the seriousness of these conditions. Like, if everyone is depressed because they had a rough Monday at work or having a panic attack over public speaking, what language then is left for someone in the midst of a severe mental suffering? And hopefully you see what I'm getting at here and you will be able to understand me and not twist my words, okay? I feel like we are stuck in this vicious cycle nowadays. Our efforts to normalize mental health conversations have led to the casual use and misuse of therapy terms, which ironically creates even more barriers for struggling people to be believed, validated, or cared for.
This is a sincere request from the therapist community to all the other communities. Stop weaponizing therapeutic language. We are struggling over here. It's almost like you're watching people justify their behavior and their actions using this clinical language. Let me give you a few examples of what this looks like. Using the word triggered. I love using certain language that describes our state of being, but Google the definition of what triggered within clinical language is. It's a complete dysregulation of your emotional trait. If you're just upset and bothered by it, use other synonymous words rather than these words that are reserved for these really, really extreme states of being. Another one is capacity, and you might fight me on this one, where people talk about like, I don't have the capacity for this and I don't have the capacity for that. You can also be confident and use language that like, I don't want to do this. Because when you constantly talk about capacity, you're also limiting your language and your expression when it's just sometimes you just don't want to. The weaponizing part of this that I'm referring to is that when we talk to other people and we start using clinical language as a scapegoat to justify everything that we start to do, obstructing my boundary that I have created to preserve this, and like, bitch, the boundary is for you to implement and maintain. It's not for other people. Other people should respect it, but the whole point of boundaries is for you. And constantly using this kind of language and shutting people down and not leaving room for conversation is making it very difficult for people right now to connect. Be careful how you use this language. It's a clinical language. The same reason you're not going to go around constantly telling everyone I have cancer, or when it's maybe you have a benign tumor. I know everyone's in therapy. It's kind of like everyone has a personal trainer in therapy. Great, love it, here for you. Really do well in your mental health journey, but please be mindful of the words, the language you use, and what communities you use it, and how you use it against people. Be very, very mindful, because I feel like that's a big portion on why people are getting isolated lately.
To quote Katie Waldman for The New Yorker, in the United States, basic mental health care remains a luxury item. There is a reason that the most fluent speakers of the trending argot tend to be wealthy and white. This may explain some of the irritation that therapy speak occasionally provokes. The words suggest a sort of woke posturing, a theatrical deference to norms of kindness. And they also show how the language of suffering often finds its way into the mouth of those who suffer least. Yeah, definitely a lot to think about here, and I obviously don't have all the answers, so definitely feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Okay, to conclude this video, I feel like it is time for us to dial down the use of therapy speak in everyday life, or at least to approach it a little bit more critically. I don't have people in my life who talk like that, but I feel like it must be kind of annoying to talk to someone who only ever says something like, we need to adjust our boundaries, instead of communicating clearly what's wrong and what isn't working in a relationship. At the end of the day, we are not robots, we are human beings, and the way we talk matters. And talking in overly clinical and therapeutic terms might actually create more distance between you and someone you're talking to. Because think about it, they might feel like you're being super condescending and purposefully excluding them from conversation, especially if those people haven't yet had the chance to learn those fancy clinical terms in therapy themselves. They might feel embarrassed that they don't even know what you're even talking about, and I can see this happening in a conversation between a Gen Zer and their boomer parents. I think if your actual goal is to improve the situation and not just dismiss, avoid, or deflect responsibility, it might be better to put therapy speak aside and just try using your own words to express your feelings, your experience, or your opinions, you know? Or maybe that's just 50% millennial in me talking. Yeah. Let me know what you think, and if you enjoyed this discussion, drop a like and consider subscribing, as that would really heal my inner child, you know? So yeah, stay safe. I'll see you in my next one, guys.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Nope. I'm supposed to say thank you for your patience. because we as women are conditioned to apologize for literally existing. And I don't want to start the evening from a deficit. I want to start the evening from a place of gratitude. So I appreciate your patience. Excuse me, I'm gonna jump in here. While I appreciate you telling us about how amazing your boyfriend is, your desperate need for external validation is just making me feel really uncomfortable. So I would actually rather us talk about me. And it's something personal. It's just a boundary that I have to set for myself to preserve my peace. So I appreciate you respecting my boundaries. I'm gonna show you guys a photo of the outfits that I bought the mall today. Look how cute I look in this dress.
Can I say something really quickly before you go on? And I want you to hear this from a place of love and nervous system regulation, but the way that you responded just now, it felt like a trauma response. If I'm being honest, yeah. And look, I'm not judging. I put the work in, fortunately, for myself. Right, and that sounds like an inner child wound you might still be dealing with, possibly rooted in some avoidant attachment. And look, I get it. I used to be the same way before I started my healing process. No. I'm not saying you're broken, per se. I'm just saying that your energy is very negative. And you follow that up with bulldozing my emotions a lot of the time when I express them towards you, and I just can't hold space for that right now because I'm protecting my peace sphere. Boundaries, you get it. Right. It's crazy because like the version of me from 2 weeks ago would have totally engaged in this dynamic, but now I just see it as your shadow self projecting.